if you don't spend 183 days in that country, meaning you're not a tax resident, or if you cut your economic ties with that country, meaning you don't own a home there, your family's not there, you don't have any economic ties to that country, then you can move your tax residency to another country, meaning you can choose to pay taxes in another country. And if you choose to pay taxes in another country that doesn't tax foreign sourced income, then you pretty much rule out taxes from your life.
Being a podcaster can be incredibly frustrating. You have so much great content, but no time to tell the world about it. And creating all the content for different social platforms can be exhausting. But I'm here to change all of that. Let Cast Magic change your life. It will analyze your podcast, create a transcript, and from that transcript, it can generate title suggestions, tweets, YouTube tags, articles, quotes, timestamps, a newsletter, LinkedIn posts, suggested clips for reels and shorts, and much, much more. And you can even give it custom prompts to ask it to write anything that you can imagine based on your show. Even better, if you follow the link below and use the code CASTING30, you can get 30% off your first month on the hobby plan. Cast Magic will save you hours and hours of time to let you do what you do best. Create great podcasts. Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I'm delighted to be joined by James, an expat and writer of Freedom Files. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. So yeah, I came across your stuff, as I said, when scrolling through Twitter, and I found a couple of your threads and started reading your newsletter about your experiences leaving America and going to work in or from parts of Latin America. So what first prompted you to leave the US, the land of the free and home of the brave and the most wonderful country on earth? Like, why choose to leave? You're already a citizen, you got the green card, people are pouring over the border trying to get the same thing. Like, why leave?
Yeah, I mean, I get this question all the time. Initially, it was just my friends and family that questioned me. But since I started writing online, it's been people from all over the world asking why I would leave the best country in the world. In short, I realized for the first time that the American dream didn't need to be lived in the American border. There's a much longer story to that. However, let's say in 2021, I quit my job. I had everything was content, everything was fine, but I knew that I was meant for more, and quit my job, started my own business, and a few months later, realized that because I was working online, didn't need to be in one place. And as I was growing my business, I wanted to reduce some overhead and extend my runway a little bit. Although my business was pretty successful right away. Came down here to Latin America on what I thought was going to be a 3-month trip. And 3 years later, I'm still here. So my reasons for staying are very different from my reasons for leaving in the first place. But yeah, essentially I realized that the American dream, however you want to define that, does not have to be lived in the American borders.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that a lot of people have spoken about on this show, specifically, is the disappearing nature of this American dream. Like, you work hard and pay your taxes and everything will work out just fine. So why South America? Like, there's loads of places you could go. I know a lot of people who have gone and like relocated to Southeast Asia. People live in like bits of Eastern Europe or like North Africa even. Why South America?
Boy, like I said, I think my reasons for staying are very different from my reasons for leaving in the first place. But since I was working online and working in a online services business, so working with clients, time zone was relatively important to me. Therefore, I did not want to go to Southeast Asia, where cost of living is actually even lower than Latin America. Think about like Thailand compared to Colombia here in Latin America. Thailand is much cheaper. Vietnam is cheaper. Cambodia is cheaper. But if I wanted to work with my clients, if I wanted to meet with my clients, I didn't want to be waking up at 3 a.m. every day to service them. That would not be fun. Especially in a 3-month trip, that would be okay. But if we extended that to 3 years, like I have, that would be quite difficult.
Yeah.
Time zone was definitely a piece of that. Language, I wanted to learn Spanish. But one thing about Latin America that's really neat and underestimated is that from Mexico all the way down to Ushuaia in Argentina, pretty much the Antarctic, there's essentially just 2 languages spoken. And that's a whole lot of land, hundreds of millions of people that speak just Portuguese and Spanish. Obviously, there are a few pockets that speak English and French, but that's really cool. In Europe, every time you move to a new country, you're speaking a different language. English is the default there, but in Latin America, I wanted to learn Spanish, and moving from one country to another, I just had to shift my accent, shift a little slang, and that was easy. A couple other reasons were proximity to the U.S. I'm here in Colombia. I'm only 3 hours from the U.S., Miami, so that's really easy in case that I go back for business, go back for conferences, go back for family and friends. And I really, really enjoy the traditional culture here in Latin America. So several reasons: time zone, cost of living, language, culture, proximity. I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty comprehensive list. So like what is the cost of living like compared to like what do you need a month to survive, like comparative to the US? Obviously that varies depending on where you are in America. But
Of course. It even varies within cities in Latin America. Not even if you're talking about countries, yes, prices vary in different cities in that country, but also within those cities, prices vary. I think the first step in kind of evaluating cost of living in another city, in another country in the world, first comes down to like what the different lifestyle you would live requires. So I don't have a car. In the US, I had a car. I needed a car, not only to get around, but to go from city to city. Here, I don't need a car. So that's automatically fewer prices in gas, fewer taxes, fewer like miscellaneous costs that you just randomly stumble upon for car culture. So there are a lot of things that, for example, you can eliminate just by moving to another region of the world. But in terms of food, in terms of transportation, a lot of that stuff is 50 to 75% cheaper, especially when you're talking about services here in Latin America. So if you're going to get a massage here in Latin America, that can be 75% discounted from what you would have to pay in the United States, making a lot of things more accessible, especially if you're earning the same amount as you did in the US. But here in Latin America, also they have a lot of import tariffs, a lot of taxes on imported goods. They're a little bit more protectionist than the United States, who trades with all different kinds of economies. So anything imported is usually a little bit more expensive. So cars are expensive. Electronics are more expensive than you would pay in the United States. An iPhone here in Colombia, for example, base model costs about $1,750 up to $2,000. In the US, that would cost like $1,000.
that's really not what you'd expect to hear. Okay.
Because they're protectionists. So Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, some of the largest countries in Latin America, and at least in South America, they're really protectionist. So they charge a lot of taxes and imports when they enter the country, and therefore, obviously, those are passed on to the consumers.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't expect to hear that. I mean, so the other thing you said that was interesting is that Okay, you don't need a car in South America. No, I'm aware. Yeah,
Generally speaking, yeah.
I'm aware that in the United States, the public transport is not ideal. Um, but is the intercity like transport like links are better in South America than they are in the United States?
Somewhat. It's not Europe. We do not have high-speed trains, which would completely transform this continent. High-speed trains, not yet, but what we do have are more walkable cities, so you don't necessarily need a car within the city. And at least here in Medellin, where I live in Colombia, we have some of the best public transportation in the entire world. We have a metro system, an above ground train, and a bus system that connects with that, along with metro cables going up and down the mountains, and a tram that runs through the downtown center of the city. So we have public transportation that works, but also if you're going from city to city within a country or internationally, usually people are taking either planes or buses. And obviously buses are extremely affordable, but also international travel via plane is not as expensive as you would think from maybe comparing US to Europe or US to Latin America. It's not that expensive.
Okay. Well, the the next thing I want to ask you is like, so you've been to a lot of places in South America. Would you say 11? You've lived in 11 different countries.
10 different countries.
10 different countries. What were all 10?
Oh boy, Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and I'm missing one. Dominican Republic.
Okay. So, which was your least favorite?
My least favorite would be Costa Rica.
Why?
Why? That's usually a hot pick. Usually Americans and people from the developed world really, really enjoy Costa Rica. And for the same reason that they like it, I actually don't like it.
Okay.
So it's very accessible for Americans, meaning transportation is really easy. You can fly right down to Costa Rica on direct flights from a lot of major cities, meaning that there are a lot of Americans and a lot of Canadians in Costa Rica, both retired and nomads, vacationers, tourists. So prices are not, it's pretty much of the 51st American state, Costa Rica is. In addition to that, it's very Americanized. I mean, to serve a tourist population. So you see American brands everywhere. And like I said, the prices are not that different from the United States. So if you're looking for more of like a local Latin American culture, I would say Costa Rica is not it. Although it has beautiful nature. And obviously that's usually what people think of first when they think about Costa Rica. I just didn't enjoy that. I like the more Latin feel. I like the more chaotic feel, the more disorganized feel that I can get in South America. South America is very different than Central America.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. No? It's, I guess the thing about, yeah, Costa Rica just almost makes me think of Jurassic Park. But the next thing I want to ask about was what is I've seen posts that you've made about the tax benefits of living in South America. Is there anywhere that's like particularly good, or are they all just like more favorable than living in the United States? Like, whoa, because if the cost of living is like significantly lower and the average wage is significantly lower, that would probably put you in a higher tax bracket comparative to what you'd be in the United States.
Yeah. So a lot of different elements here. First, I'll say this is not financial advice or tax advice or anything like that, but I'll speak from my own experience here in Latin America. South America is not as tax friendly if you're looking at the laws and the rules as, say, Central America. Central America, ranging from Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Guatemala. I believe every single one of those countries, excluding Honduras, is a territorial tax system, which means that no matter if you're a tax resident, and I'll get into what exactly that means because it varies from country to country. No matter if you're a tax resident or a citizen or a resident, doesn't matter. They will never tax your foreign sourced income. So if you're working a remote job or if you have a business that you earn through outside of that country, then they will not tax it. They only tax if your customers and your business or your company that you're working for is located in that country. That's huge.
Okay.
So you can earn.
Does that mean, sorry, just to pause there, does that mean that like if you're, so say your company's registered in the United States, then you'd be paying like taxes in whatever state you're registered, the business is registered in the United States, and then any income you were taking for that would also be paid in the United States?
Yep.
Okay. So
you're mentioning an entrepreneur's perspective. So there's the remote job or the more online business type. Well, it can be a physical business too, but if you live outside the country, we'll just assume it's an online business. And yeah, if you are a U.S. citizen and you have a U.S. address, you have to pay U.S. taxes. If you're a U.S. citizen, you have to pay taxes no matter where you live in the world, no matter if you spend zero time in the country of the United States. That's the only country in the world that does that. There's one other in Africa, but it's irrelevant, Eritrea. You don't need to know that. That's not going to be on the exam. The United States citizens have to pay taxes on their income no matter where they live, no matter where they earn, no matter blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But if you are a U.S. citizen and you move to Costa Rica, for example, which does not have a foreign sourced income tax, they do not tax foreign sourced income, you still only need to pay taxes in the United States. Now, if you move to Colombia and you become a tax resident, you would have to pay tax on your worldwide income here as well.
So you'd be paying twice.
There's a fine line there because there's a double taxation treaty between a lot of Latin American countries and the United States, if we're talking about the United States or Canada or the UK.
Yeah.
But the UK and Canada have different rules for citizens of those countries. If you don't spend 183 days in that country, meaning you're not a tax resident, or if you cut your economic ties with that country, meaning you don't own a home there, your family is not there, you don't have any economic ties to that country, then you can move your tax residency to another country, meaning you can choose to pay taxes in another country. And if you choose to pay taxes in another country that doesn't tax foreign sourced income, then you pretty much rule out taxes from your life. So an example of that is, let's say a Canadian from Toronto. Well, let's make it more applicable to your audience, Josh. A UK citizen wants to go move to Latin America. Chile and Uruguay have a tax holiday once you become a tax resident in those countries. One is 3 years and 10 years, meaning you have to pay taxes after that. But in Uruguay, the taxes are very low. Chile, not so much. But in Paraguay and Bolivia, and I'm talking about South America, not so much Central America, but pretty much all in Central America, you have territorial tax systems, so very favorable. But here in South America, Paraguay and Bolivia are both territorial tax systems as well, meaning that you can move your tax residence there. So you're a UK citizen, you can spend 183 days, meaning more than half of the year, in Bolivia or Paraguay. And both of those countries have a territorial tax system, so they will not tax your foreign sourced income. So as long as your job or your online business is headquartered in the UK, then you will root out your taxes pretty much to zero. Now there may be some like minor percentages here and there, and it requires obviously cutting your economic ties with that first country, the
Okay.
UK.
Yeah. So right. That's what I was just going to check. You have to be a tax resident, right? Okay. Like you said, so you have to be a tax resident of, say, Bolivia.
Yeah,
You can be a tax resident.
There's a few steps in becoming a tax resident of a new country, because you have to cut your economic ties with the first country.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah, most people forget that step.
I mean, I'd assume it's probably like not super duper complicated, but probably requires some forms and, filling out some stuff. Okay,
Correct.
so you'd have to be a tax resident, let's say Bolivia, because, yeah, I don't know, it sounds more attractive. Because Top Gear did a special there, I don't know, it sounds like a fun place. Then they got the rainforest, right?
What makes Paraguay especially attractive for a lot of people is that the tax residency required time, so usually it's 183 days, is far lower. It's just 4 months, so 120 days in Paraguay. In Bolivia, it's still that 6-month mark, that 183 days.
Okay. So you can go there, you have to spend 120 days there, and they have a tax treaty possibly with the United Kingdom. We'd have to check that. But then you would they don't tax you on your foreign income. So you would have to, you could leave, so your company would stay in the United Kingdom and you would receive your income in Bolivia, but you wouldn't have to pay taxes on that income in the United Kingdom because of the tax treaty, not Bolivia, Paraguay.
Mm-hmm.
So the tax treaty would mean you wouldn't pay taxes on the stuff, the income earned from the UK business, but you would also pay zero, if not very little, taxes in Paraguay. So yeah, you'd be close to tax exempt.
Yeah. So now the UK has recently struck down the non-dom tax regime, which will change things in the UK. And I don't work with UK citizens as much as I do Americans or Canadians. So things will change in the future. I believe that rule goes into law like in the next few months. And I'm not sure how that's going to change things for UK citizens. However, what we've said here, I think, still is relevant. You would have to first cut your economic ties with the UK and make another country, preferably a territorial tax system, or just a low tax country, your tax residency.
Yeah, okay. Right, I was saying, let me just get this up for people to have a look at. No, wrong one. There we go. Okay, so it says, sorry, I can't share it with you and the people watching at the same time. I'll just read it out for you and for people listening. The UK government has announced plans to abolish the non-domiciled tax status, which has been a contentious issue in the country. I was happy to see this. I don't like people dodging taxes. Well, we talk and sit here about dodging taxes, but it's different when it's me trying to dodge the taxes. It's all those other people that need to pay, not me. Although technically, if you're not in the country, I don't see why I wouldn't feel guilty about it if you weren't actually living here. It depends how much you were, stretching it. The change aimed to ensure that individuals, live in the UK for a significant period are taxed. The non-dom status will be abolished in April 2025, and individuals will be taxed on their worldwide income regardless of where it's earned. The new system will be based on residency rather than domicile. This means that individuals will be taxed on their UK-sourced income regardless of their domicile. So you would have to not be a UK resident anymore by the looks of things. Existing non-domicile status will be grandfathered in, and their tax status will be maintained until April 2025. Individuals who have been UK resident for 15 out of the last 20 years will be deemed domicile for tax purposes. Intriguing.
Right. So I think that the key point there is that you would have to become a resident of another country.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, as long as you were outside of the country of the UK, then, or if your domicile were outside of the country, then you wouldn't have to pay tax on UK income. But now you have to make a new place your tax residency in order to get out of those taxes.
Well, I mean, that's essentially what you're advocating for anyway, right? Is to like, yeah, in this case, you would have to become a tax resident in order to take advantage of those things that you're talking about. So that would be all right then. That's not too bad.
And part of, I think, this lifestyle that I have chosen to live, or that has attracted me, this sovereign individual lifestyle, flag theory, internationalization, is that you really want to diversify outside of just two countries. You maybe want residency in several countries, or citizenship in several countries, and your bank accounts in several countries. Your business is headquartered in several countries. One really popular path for UK citizens, if they're entrepreneurs, is to set up an LLC in the United States, which is a pass-through entity, meaning that if you have no US source income, no US customers, no US like physical presence, as long as you're not working in the US, then that is a tax-free corporation structure. That is a tax-free business formation structure. So together for UK citizens, together with a Paraguay tax residency, and maybe residency there as well. It's one of the most accessible residency programs in the world. And a US pass-through entity of an LLC, you can, minimize your taxes almost to zero, if not zero.
And all you have to do, spend 4 months in Paraguay.
Now, I would say that Paraguay is not the most exciting place in the entire world. It is a landlocked country in the middle of South America. But with these like attractive tax rules, obviously people have been flooding Paraguay. Germans, Dutch, French, Spanish, Canadians, not so much Americans because they say they still have to pay taxes regardless. But UK citizens, obviously, I know a lot of people who spend about 4 months there, if not more. Some people love it. Spend 4 months there or more every year to take advantage of those tax advantages.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's amazing what you can do with your money now if you aren't tied to somewhere. And I mean, I guess that this is what like people always bitch about the rich being able to do. But it seems like if you're quite determined and you don't fancy or you don't mind spending a few months every year somewhere else, it could be all right. I mean, tax free. I mean,
that will be the gateway drug for a lot of people to, if you're just spending 4 months in Paraguay each year, why not spend the whole year outside the UK where it's probably better weather, maybe better food, maybe happier people, more sun, cheaper cost of living.
Mm.
There are a lot of reasons why people make this decision to live a life that I've now fallen in love with. I mean, like I said, this was just going to be a 3-month trip for me. And 3 years later, I've now lived in 10 different countries and spend about 330 days outside the United States every year.
Wow. I mean, it sounds wonderfully attractive in many ways. I mean, I spent quite a lot of my 20s not tied to a place. I mean, I come back to Ireland or the United Kingdom every 5, 6, 7 months or whatever it was. Visit the family, see my friends, stuff like that. I am now actually, in order to facilitate traveling in Europe, I'm also a dual citizen. I literally got it like 2 days ago, my Irish passport. Third attempt.
What is your other citizenship if you don't mind?
I got an Irish passport and a British passport. So I've got like number 3 and 4 and the most powerful passports in the world. So I'm pretty good. I mean, I got right to live and work in 27 different countries, or 28, including the UK. So that's pretty good. But so yeah, I spent quite a lot of time. Like I was doing seasonal work. I did a lot of traveling, visiting the people I've met whilst doing my seasonal work, and after a while, I started to get like a longing for more stability and like somewhere with roots. Do you think that well, you say you're more of an expat now than a digital nomad. Like, did you find that as well? Did you find yourself like drawn to having like an actual base as opposed to like flitting around places?
Yeah, for sure. Before we go on, one more thing about the EU that I was thinking about when you were talking about your two different passports. That, by the way, that's an incredible combination. The UK with Ireland with access to the EU. But I will say there are more settlement blocks, which is what the EU is called, than just the EU in the world. So there's Mercosur in South America. There's the Andean community in South America, which overlaps with the Mercosur. There's a Caribbean settlement block. There's a Central American settlement block. There are so many different settlement blocks that give you kind of residency rights in several countries when you get citizenship or get residency in one of those member countries. So there are more than just the EU settlement block countries in the world. So great. No, I'm glad I cautioned your listeners about that. Yes. So I nomaded for 2 years. I wouldn't have been able to live in 10 different countries in 3 years without having done that. And there are a lot of downsides of nomading, for sure. And it's all fun and games, and the expectations are so positive, and everybody likes to put a bright face on it until they actually live it, because there are certainly downsides. Loneliness, because you're moving depends on if you're fast traveling or slow traveling, however you want to define those, but you're moving every week or 2 weeks or month or 6 weeks to a different place. So you're not there long enough to create deep, real, meaningful relationships with people. And if you are, it's with people who are doing something similar to you and going to a different place than you are next. So I found that relationships were pretty fleeting, superficial, transactional, and that's not super fun. In addition to that, as an entrepreneur, you want a routine. You want consistency. Because without that consistency in your life, you can't dedicate your creativity, your innovative spirit, and strategic mind to the things that will make you money, the growing your business. It's really difficult when you're moving every week to dedicate a lot of your energy to the business instead of like figuring out your logistics in the next place. Therefore, I wanted to establish a base. And I think there's a happy medium between that more nomadic lifestyle, which can be exciting. Like you get to see so many different places, you get to meet so many incredible people in such a little amount of time. There's a happy medium between that and having one single base where you live the whole year. What I'd like to do in the future is have multiple bases around the world and maybe spend 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months in each one, depending on how many I have. So I'm thinking having 2 to 3 bases where I spend a significant amount of time every year with my girlfriend and probably future wife and hopefully future kids as well. Obviously, this is a lot easier for me to say as I got some fireworks there.
Yeah.
This is a lot easier for me to say as a 27-year-old in a relationship. If you're not in a relationship, if you don't have a family, if you don't have a wife, that's easier. But even with a family, there are some options. I've met some incredible people who are world schooling and homeschooling and bringing their children around with them as they nomad or as they have a couple different bases in the world throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be an adventure, if you're going to take your family and do it. I mean, like you've said, maybe like a couple of places to hop between that allows you to like put down those routes without like necessarily like getting stagnated, maybe in a way that some people might feel. Like, so how did you find it making friends? Maybe not specifically while you were nomading, but like not once you picked somewhere to settle,
Yeah.
an expat rather than nomad, as you put it.
Yeah.
Like, how was it like making friends and finding friends, and like, because I know that would be something that would put off a lot of people. Like
Yeah.
I've done like time spending like months at a time like in other countries, but it's almost always been somewhere where I at least had people to like start a social circle around. Do you know what I mean? Like there was friends, or like there was a place I used to work in Austria every winter. I just got back from doing the latest one. I wasn't meant to be going back, but they got me back for one more. But then I have like a base of people there, but I've never been anywhere that's like you're just dropped really, apart from maybe Canada, but then that's not quite the culture shock, where you have no one around you. So what, like, how do you go about finding friends, and what advice would you give to people who are either in that scenario or maybe thinking about doing it?
Well, I will say it's not actually as different as you think it would be as making friends in the UK when you move to a new city, or move to a new country inside the EU, or move across the country in the US, whatever. It's not that different. I'm lucky that I found a really cool spot here in Medellin, and I'll talk about that specifically, about how I made friends here. One, I think it's important that if you're going to live outside the country, that you make international friends as well as local friends wherever you are. I speak Spanish, well, now I speak Spanish. I didn't at the beginning of these travels, but now I do. And that has opened a whole new world to me. I'm now able to communicate with 600 million more people than I was 3 years ago, which is insane. Absolutely insane. I can go anywhere in Latin America and Spain and now communicate with, and connect with 600 million more people, whether that's opening new opportunities for my business and me writing online, whether that's just meeting really cool people, whether that's meeting a mate, a girlfriend, whatever. I'm now able to communicate with a lot more people than I was before. So language is a huge piece if you want to make local friends wherever you're going. But in addition to that, I guess on the local piece, also integrating into the culture. So not necessarily living like a local, especially if that local population lives a very different lifestyle than you want to live. But adopting that culture a little bit, kind of picking up their slang, picking up their accent, being at, like, here in Colombia, the people are very welcoming and warm and friendly. So I try to adopt that attitude as well. So integrating into the culture, speaking the language, really good way to meet locals. On the other side of things, I chose to live here in Medellin, where there's a booming nomad population, a booming expat population, and it's very international in certain parts of the city. Therefore, I'm able to connect with Bulgarians and Hungarians and British and Australians and Americans and Canadians when they're just passing through, yes, but there are also a lot of people who either spend 6 months here a year and don't become tax residents, so they spend a little bit less than 6 months, or they live here permanently and they're into some things that I'm into, like entrepreneurship, like fitness, like hiking, etc. And just like you would in the United States or the UK, you meet them on WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups or online. I'm lucky that once I started publishing my thoughts online, they started getting some traction and they started helping some people. So I grew a little bit of following, and therefore people always reach out to me and say, hey, I live in Medellin. Do you want to meet up for a coffee? Granted, those can be a lot of weird people, but I would say about 75% of them are really, really fascinating people that I've just gelled with perfectly because they know me, they know what I'm into, and because of that, I'm able to connect with both the international people and the local people as well.
The language barrier. What was your level of Spanish before you started the trip?
0.
Zero.
I,
Like in school a little bit maybe. Like did you have some words or like?
in up to high school, so I could say the colors, I could say the letters, I could say me llamo James, but that but that was about it. Um, when I came here, one of my goals was to learn more Spanish. And in my third week here, so this is another reason why I've stayed here in Latin America. I've met who was going to be my future and is now my current girlfriend. So we've been together for 3 years, and she does not speak English with me.
Ah,
She speaks only Spanish. So I needed to learn Spanish. Apart from communicating with her, but integrating into the culture, I really wanted to learn Spanish as well. Um, I would say there are two really important things that I would recommend in order to learn a new language, and that is daily conversation. You have to keep up that habit of learning, speaking, and listening, and writing, and reading that language, but also full immersion. So daily conversation paired with full immersion, you're going to learn a new language pretty quickly. And Spanish is probably one of the easiest languages for English speakers to learn.
you think so?
Yeah, you'll learn that it's very similar in some ways, more similar than I would say Chinese is, or any of the East Asian languages, or any of the Slavic languages. Very difficult.
Mm.
But French, Italian, Spanish, I would say those are probably the easiest for English speakers to learn. And how do you do it? Daily conversation and full immersion. That border exists. If you don't want to learn a language, that barrier can be pretty high, and it'll kind of ruin your experience if you don't speak the language.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a much better time in Austria knowing the language. I worked there one season before I learned German, basically, because I was a ski instructor and I had no need to learn German because the Austrian kids don't need an Irish person to tell them how to ski. They're going to take one of their local race coaches who was probably on the Austrian junior ski team. Like, fair enough. But my season there sucked like a lot more. Once I learned the language, it was much easier to then you get invited to stuff, you get to know the locals, and yeah, it's just a lot more fun. Like to add something to your learning curve or your thing. So what'd you say? Daily conversations, full immersion, date a girl from that country. I know you said that, but you didn't put it as part of your thing. A friend of mine who I know very well, he's a Hungarian, and he speaks English, Hungarian, Spanish, a little bit of Portuguese, and a bit of German now. The German has taken him so many seasons to get to this point because he never dated a girl he never dated a local girl. And that's how he learned Spanish in 3 months, because he was trying to date a girl who spoke no English. So trying to date someone, because the communication is so important, you will figure it out.
Yeah, if you're going to date a girl outside of your country who doesn't speak your language, good luck if you're not going to learn her language, or if she's not going to learn yours. There has to be some medium there where you get kind of Google Translate out of the way, because Google Translate cannot translate feelings. It can't translate body language. That you can pick up. But if you have a language in common, that's the key.
Yeah, definitely. So is there any, aside from the daily conversations, is there because my best friend is getting married and I have to give a speech as best man, and the bride is Spanish, so half the wedding is going to be Spanish. So I said I would learn Spanish. The wedding's next year, so I said I would learn Spanish in order to give the best man speech in both languages. Is there any tips? When you say full immersion, should I just be watching all my TV shows in Spanish with subtitles?
When I say full immersion, I mean living amongst Spanish, where you don't have a choice to speak Spanish if well, you don't have a choice. So here, at least here in Latin America, very few people speak English. Very few people. So you don't have a crutch to fall back on when you're at the cafe or you're ordering at the restaurant or you're at the theater. Everybody speaks Spanish. In Spain, that's very different because most people in Spain also speak English or at least understand it.
I've been assured the people at this wedding will not.
So what I would do, if you don't, obviously you have your own life situation, but daily conversation with someone, you can either sign up for classes or find a Spanish speaker to have conversation with every day and immerse yourself. Go to Latin America and live there for the next year. Obviously, that would be best case scenario, but a lot of people don't have that option. So I would recommend first picking up the grammar. So whether you do that on YouTube or books, really great way to learn. And then translating everything. So changing your phone language to Spanish, a little hack that a lot of people don't use. Watching videos, listening to podcasts in Spanish, but with Spanish subtitles. Do not do it in English subtitles because then you'll just read the English. That's another crutch. You'll just fall back on those English subtitles and then just forget the Spanish audio. So that just changing the content that you can consume on a daily basis is just another way to kind of immerse yourself on a smaller scale.
Okay. All some very useful tips. The grammar as well, actually, it's nice to know, because when I had to learn German, that's the thing that I got down first. Because once I understood that, it was just vocab, and then that's fine. Yeah. You can learn the words. But once you understand how to construct a sentence, that's when I found I got a lot better. I was like, okay, actually, like I know, okay, verb, noun, like preposition, etc. I understood what order they had to go in, or what was it? Time, like the thing with German is time, manner, place. You have to say the time is going to happen at, the manner in which it's going to happen in the place. You know, so it's like I will. At 5 o'clock, I will go quickly to the cinema. It has to be in that order. Germans are very like that. Like I feel like Spanish is slightly more like free form. The Germans are very much like, here's the rule and that's the rule. Like,
yeah. If you try to speak or if you try to teach English to someone, it is the most confusing language. I have so much empathy now. I didn't before, but now I do for people who are trying to learn English because our rules are just impossible to learn.
They make no sense.
The rules, you can just throw them out the window because the difference between like tear and tear, like a tear from your eye and tear like paper, it's the same exact word, but why is it pronounced differently? That doesn't make any sense. to foreign language learners, that's impossible to learn.
Yeah,
and they're obviously
you just have to know, like, yeah.
There's so many cases of that, like lead and lead, like the element of lead, same exact word, but you pronounce it differently.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of these instances. It's really funny.
When I live with my girlfriend and she's learning English, and I'm trying to teach her like the rules of our language, but it's impossible. You just have to learn through grammar first and then daily conversation. There's no other way.
Maybe this explains the education system. Because I don't know if this happens in America, but in the UK, it's like you go to primary school and they teach you a bunch of stuff, say about like maths or physics or history. And then you get to like secondary school and then they're like, actually, that was like kind of true, but not really. So here's like the real rules for all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then like you get to university and say you go deeper and they go, well, that was kind of like along the right path, but here's like actually the stuff that this is the real truth. And like it kind of makes sense with our grammar now, because you go, okay, so like here's the rules for the grammar. But once you get that, then actually, well, here's the real rules for the grammar, because there's all these exceptions. And then when you get past that, you're like, actually, just forget the rules. Just each individual thing is its own thing. Anyway, back to the Freedom Files to wrap up this because I'm sure you are a busy man. So the Freedom Files basically teaches people how they can go about becoming an expat or digital nomad, or one prior to the other. Why should people sign up to check it out?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I speak from my own experience. I went through a lot of change over the last few years. I quit my job, started my own business the next day. 5 months later, I moved out of my home country, to a country that I didn't know the language, didn't know the culture. And 3 years later, I'm still here after living in 9 other countries in that time. It's not as difficult as I want people to think it is. Living abroad, relocating, reducing your taxes, working and earning online, and reducing your cost of living, those are all extremely possible. Not only because I've done it and I'm a nobody. If I can do this, you could do this. But I've also helped hundreds of other people do it, and I'm friends with so many other people who have done it. So if that even excites you, the fact of the idea, the dream of living abroad, living in this new culture, learning a new language, being happier in a sunnier, warmer, healthier place and culture, it's very, very achievable. It's very achievable. And I document my journey through that experience, as well as try to help as much as possible, as many people as possible, achieve that same dream for so many people. It really is a dream for so many people, and it's very achievable.
Well, that's a beautiful, beautiful answer. I hope some people take you up on your offer. I will definitely be looking into it. Things, links to your Twitter, Freedom Files, etc., will all be in the description below. Is there anything else you want to plug before we finish up?
No, I would say that's it. If you go to my website, freedomfiles.co, I do have a free freedom checklist. So there are 15 items on that freedom checklist, and you can kind of run through things you might have already checked off on your journey to freedom. But that might be a good starting point for a lot of these people in terms of, okay, what do I do now, right? I have a lot of essays on my website and in the newsletter you can sign up for, but the freedom checklist might be a really good start for people.
Okay. Looks good. Yeah, people, sign up. Links in the description. And James, thanks very much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Josh, this is my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thanks for letting me share the word of nomadism and internationalization.
Oh, that's going to have to be the title, isn't it? The word of nomadism. Thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.